Hi, my name's Cheri. Welcome to my stamp studio. I have a fun card I'm going to show you today. It's going to kind of follow after the card that this is the last tutorial that is up on YouTube. So it's going to kind of be an extension of that one. So I did want to remind you that if you haven't ordered yet, or even if you have, from the new catalog that went live this week, I have some specials up on my website. So you get some freebies if you order this weekend. It's a weekend special, so it will end on Sunday. I always have freebies, but there's some extras because the catalog's new. So this one I posted, and we did it at camp. I had real for life people in my house yesterday for a camp. And this one I did with Memento ink on shimmery white cardstock, and I used ink pads and the new Waterpainters. So it was a really light touch. It uses the new Way to Goat stamp set. It says, "Happy birthday, you old goat. And I got you a cake, but I ate it." It's a super cute little stamp set. Because we used a light touch, and I think because it was evening and I had it kind of cool in here because there were going to be lots of people in my house, we were able to use the Memento. Now today I'm going to use more water, and I'm going to use a different stamp set, so it's going to be a little bit of a different technique. So I'm going to use Walk in the Woods. It's a really cute stamp set. My hands are already dirty because I cleaned up from camp, so I have ink all over them, but you know, we're stampers. Sometimes our hands get dirty. I'm going to use a Walk in the Woods. It's a fun line art, kind of sketchy stamp set. I chose it because I have a giant stack of new things sitting to my right on my table, and it was on top. So that's kind of how it went. But then I saw the words. There's one that says, "The world needs more of what you are." So that's the one I'm going to go with. And it also has "Everything will be okay." So I like both of those sayings. This one happened to fit the punch that I'm going to use because I'm going to use a new punch. And I'm also going to use all of the new in colors except for magenta. I tried to get it on there and it just didn't work, but maybe. So I'm going to use our watercolor paper on this one instead of shimmery white, so I can use more color. So let's start with a little hedgehog and my Stays On ink. My Stays On pads have all seen better days, and sometimes I think I should order a new one, and I just don't. I don't know why. So I'm going to put it a little off center because the mushrooms are big and they're going to go over here. So when you stamp, just hold it down a little bit longer. You can see it's a sketchy kind of line art. And then I have a little mask. And when you cut the little mask, cut it just a little bit smaller. If you cut it to size or a little bit bigger, then sometimes you have like a little gap in between your images. This is where where's my take your pick tool? I'm just gonna use my scissors. My pad is not attached very well to the bottom of the stamp pad. I have 3 and the other 2 were really dry. And your Stays On pad needs to be wet and it needs to be re-inked often, but I didn't want to re-ink right before I went live because then sometimes it has too much ink. Stays On pads have their place. I use Memento pads 98% of the time. But if you live someplace where it's muggy, like in the Midwest, then sometimes the Memento will run on a technique like this, because when I did my mock-up, it was a little bit smeary, and this stamp with the kind of line art it didn't need to look any more smeary. So there's that. So I swapped over to the Stays On from my Memento, but you shouldn't use Stays On your photopolymer sets. I mean, you can clean it off immediately because it's not good. This ink isn't good for your photopolymer, and it also will stain. You know, it's not coming off. But if you want to stamp like on your window sheet, or you want to do this kind of stamping, then you have to use it. So if I don't have to, if Memento will work, then I go with the Memento. So here's the little leaf. And I hold it just a second longer because this paper is really porous and it gives the ink a second to absorb. But you don't want to rock it, because if you rock it all around, so there we go. It's a nice deep impression. And here's a little scrap. This is where I did. You can see it's smeary. So that's the smeariness that the Memento gave me. I'm just not pleased with it. I don't like it. This is going to look a lot better when it's not smeary, and we can compare at the end, except we are going to use, I don't like to waste the cardstock. This isn't the world's cheapest cardstock, so we're going to punch out of it. So there's where we're going to get our punch from. So now I did even take my Memento one when I did this one. I even heat set it a second because I know it's muggy, and I know with the amount of water I was going to use that it might have been an issue, and that didn't even help. So, you know, it was what it was, and it didn't work. So that's why we're switching to something else. And that's why often when I do a video, I have a finished card to show you at the end. There's no finished card because I wasn't going to do it again because I could tell what the issue was. So let's start with our hedgehog, and I'm going to use cinnamon, which is one of our new in colors. So you just take your pad. This is the first time I've used them. The Midnight was the only pad that I'd used because I just got them. So I used the Midnight to stamp. The other ones I hadn't even used at all. You just squish them together, and then it puts a little bit of ink right here. You don't need a ton. You can see that's all I used to do the first one. And then here's our Waterpainters. They come in this fun little case. They are a huge fan of Aqua Painter, but these are cheaper. Not only are they cheaper, you get 3 of them instead of 2, and there's 3 different sizes, which we will use all 3, and you know, it's nice to have the little storage case to put them back into. So let's go with the medium size. So here. You don't need to keep the lids on while you're using them, so let's just pull the lids off. I will tell you that when you fill them with water, it feels like at least to me, like it's backwards. So here's the big background one, or any kind of watercolor wash techniques. I have scrap paper here so I can dab it off. Here's the medium and here's the small. The Aqua Painters really had like a large and a less large. So this has a much better selection of sizes. So let's go with, maybe I'll do this one. And you can see I used the Bumble Bee last. So just get that off, and you can see it has a little thing where it says push. You want it to be wet, but not sopping, unless you want sopping. We are gonna get some sopping, but not right now. So I'm just going to go and grab some of the cinnamon, and everywhere where the Stampin' Up! Artist have put the little lines of ink, I'm just going to add some dark cinnamon. And now because I've used the StazOn, there's not going to be any of I knew as soon as I put this on here, and if you live someplace like in Nevada where it's super dry, then by all means use your Memento. But I knew as soon as I put this on here and I started to see a little bit of running that it wasn't going to work with the amount of water I wanted to use. In fact, that was my second attempt that you saw, because on the other side was my first. Over here, see, I tried to wash the whole thing because I wanted to have a coat of water. So see, sometimes what we do doesn't work, but by the time it's working, that's what you get to see. So you don't have to go through all those wastes of paper. In fact, that one's so wasted, there's hardly any place that's big enough for me to put. Look how cute he is. So just kind of dab the darkest amount of color, like I said, where the artist put the dark color. Now I'm going to take my thing over here on the scrap paper, and I'm going to squeeze to get a little bit more water. So you can see now I've got some water. And I can both kind of clean this off and pull the color around. So now I've got some light cinnamon. The cinnamon has a nice rust tinge to it. And then I can pick up like just light bits, and because there's water there, it won't go down as dark. So there we have our little hedgehog guy. And then let's do our Bumble Bee for the leaf, because those kind of can be the same color-ish, and I'll use the same size. And this one I pretty much just put strong color If you've been a Stampin' Up! Person for a while, the Bumble Bee reminds me of more mustard. This one I'm not even really going onto any of the black. I'm just kind of keeping it in the middle so I have a nice golden color in there. So there we go. Squeeze that out. Now let's go to Crumb Cake. This one I'm pretty sure I need to squeeze more because the mushrooms are the largest thing to color. So with this, I did the same thing where I started with all of the places where there's dark. Down here on the undersides, I pretty much just colored the whole thing darker because you want it to have some differences of color. So once you have these little darker places, then again, you're going to squeeze, but this time because you're working with a large area, you can afford to get a little bit more out of your brush. So you can see when the water comes out. Now I'm going to fill this whole thing with some water. And you can see what was on my brush is kind of cleaning itself. But I can also go back up and then pick some color up. And the water doesn't really move on the watercolor paper unless you move it around. And like I said, these are bigger. This and when I do the background, you kind of have to squeeze your brush a couple of times. And you can have a piece of scrap paper or a napkin or a tissue, or you can even use your chamois to squish your water onto. But as the water pools, it gives us this really fun watercolor kind of look. And then as it starts to soak in, any place you want it to be darker, you can go back. And then I'm going to just grab a little bit right here and go into his face to give his face just a little bit more definition. I'm not going to do the whole thing because I want to keep that cinnamon. And same down here on his feet and his body. So it just gives him a little bit more mix of color. And again, you can get some dark right here on his nose, just so he doesn't have he was looking so cute, except for all of the Memento ink was blending in. I'm like, yeah, this is not the look I was going for. And down on his little toes, I didn't get the cinnamon on his toes, so now his toes can be more of that. And now that this has had a second to soak in, I can go back up and hit these spots again that are the darker places. So that's that. You want to make sure that you don't have giant pools of water in your pads. You can see that's dry. And that's the nice thing about having the aqua painters is the water stays in here. But again, because our stamp pads close with the water, with the ink on the top, it's not likely that it's going to touch. And I'm going to take the smaller tip to get the grass. This is the Just Jade. Let's squeeze it together. I'm going to start with it a little on the drier side and get, again, the blades of grass that you can see. And part of the reason I'm doing the drier is I don't want it to mix with the mushrooms. And then I don't want it to look like there's just grass over here. So we're just going to get some faux grass. And then just kind of give it some, and I like kind of the dry brush technique looking underneath all of it. just kind of pull that in. And again, in here, you don't want it to look like the only place that there's grass, but that's the nice thing with the small tip is that you can kind of just get some. So just a little bit of the jade. And now we get to do the fun part. I don't need this color. I started with that color and I didn't end up using it. Now we're gonna use the Misty Moonlight to get the background. It makes it look, okay, I'm gonna be honest, this might be a better color selection. This makes it look like it's a little dark. Like our little hedgehog's out at night. He's out past curfew. But you know, I'm trying to use in colors. So I like it because it's in colors, but if you want to go for a lighter blue, by all means do it. So we're going to use our giant tip. You do want to get your water coming out. Otherwise you're going to have a giant thing of darkness on your card. So then start off your card and pull it on. And then kind of get some water on your card. Again, it says where to push. So make sure you have water coming out, and it's gonna keep it. If you don't do that, then it really will look like midnight. Because you don't want it to be super dark. But you can see when you put it on here now, if the card's wet, then it pulls into it. And it also gives it that fun watercolor look. So get some more water on here, and you can see as the water goes that you can kind of drag it around. Oh, I have bread that just finished, but it's in the bread machine, so it can sit there a second. If you follow me and my friends on Creating and Sharing the Life You Love, we have been cooking sourdough for quite some time before it was the thing to do. And then next thing you know, like everybody in the world's doing sourdough, but it's a thing we've done. So we're having sourdough, and I just made some hummus. So it's some summertime pool food for us. And then down here at the bottom, I don't want it to be like blue on the bottom, but I also don't want it to be white. So I'm gonna kind of blend that green and just a fraction of the blue because it's gonna be mounted on some blue. It's a little dark right here, so you can squeeze this, kind of pull that out. So how cute is that? Again, it's a little dark right there, but my saying is gonna go over that. And you can tell that's where I hit the card, where it didn't have a lot of water. Let's see if we can blend out. There we go. So you can see what I mean about it being moonlight. It's a little bit misty, or you could use seaside spray and it might look like the real hedgehog's out during the daytime instead of at night. So here we go, how cute. I could smear, let's take this a little bit. It's a little bit, where's my cinnamon? He's a little streaky. I'm not a fan of the streaks right there. So let's make him not be quite so stripy. In fact, sometimes with a watercolor card, you can let it dry and then go back and kind of fix it. So sometimes my card's all the way mounted and then I go back and kind of fix up. There, now he's not quite so, he looked more like a raccoon. Or a skunk. His little lines there. There we go. Okay, I'll put all the lids on those when we're done. So I'm gonna use, get the wet paper out of the way. I've got the Misty Moonlight, and then the cinnamon, and then this is a piece of our velveteen paper. So it comes in the cinnamon and Highland Heather and soft sea foam. And it just, I thought it gave a fun little forest texture, or like the fur texture of our hedgehog. So I'll mount this over. This is our new Stampin' seal. This is not the Seal Plus, it's just the seal. This is our new postage label, postage stamp. So here's my little scrap. pop that out. This has a stamp set that goes with, but it's I love postage, anything. It gives it a nice little antique look. So the seal, you'll like it. It's ergonomically, so you know which is up and which is down. It's a little bit on the wet side. Stick this on here. But you can see, you just pull and it comes off so super easy. You get more of it on a spool. My daughter and I did a live where we made our first 2 cards. It's on my channel. It doesn't have my typical, let's see how it works on, I think for this, I'm gonna put it on the back of this. It doesn't have my typical channel thing on it because it was a live. So it has my daughter holding our 2 cards, but towards the end, we did a great comparison of this and the fuse. Stick this. How do we want this? We want it crooked, straight. Like I said, I don't have another card because I didn't want to take the time to make a smeary card into a real card. Let's go up there. Okay, it's not going to stick to the wet, so there's a good thing to know, which a lot of adhesives don't, but it does stick to the back of this. I'm going to take some twine because, you know, that looks like something you'd find out in the forest, which was also on my goat card, so it's still laying here. That's the wrong direction. Cheri. You often notice if you watch me that I don't know which direction things go when they're backwards. When I hold things up to the camera. So let's get a couple of these little loops over here. And let's pull them this way. Pull it there. Then I have these, and I have our in color dots. I did think maybe I could put a magenta on here, but I don't think so. So these are from the Tasteful Touches embellishments. I didn't poke one out because I didn't know if I wanted to use it. And when you poke them out and then don't use them, it tends that they get lost or broken. Come on, pop out. But these will be perfect. So let's put this part. And there's like a darker side and a lighter side. I think I like the darker. See how the seal, yep, that works on here. Nothing like doing everything the first time for you guys to see. And then let's go with the yellow since matches the leaf. And then you want 1 or 3 or 5. You want an odd number of embellishments like this. So we could stop at 1, but why stop at 1 if you can do 3? I think I thought about doing a cinnamon one, but we're kind of heavy on the cinnamon on this card. There you go. It's a fun, relaxing, and see, now you could go back, let this dry a little bit, and if you want to, I might hit it up with a little bit more, some darker places of colors now that it started to dry. So when you go over to my website and you see the final picture of the one, I can show you some, you can see just the difference of the ink. You can see how this has that smeary. I don't like the smeary. You can see how the grass lost all of its definition and how the mushrooms kind of lost its definition and how this smeared here, how much better the leaf looks, the difference of the inks. But I don't have 2 cards to show you. Here's the ultimate in smeary. So, but I might hit this up a little bit more and then you can go over to the website and see how it looks when it has just a little bit more colored definition added to it. So everybody have a great Saturday, and go to my website, check out my specials, and I will see you back. I might get a Sunday video up or I might not. So I'll either see you Sunday or Monday. Bye.